here before, but I will just mention that there is a Q&A session to follow, so please feel free to join in after that. And if you have comments or suggestions or links, then the chat column is by far the most appreciated place to put them. So thank you. So Malcolm, we're way past the usual start time, so may I hand over to you, and perhaps you could go ahead and wow us, please?
Well, okay, well, we can try. I'm not sure. So shall I start by doing the share then, and let's
By all
see
means, yes.
whether we get the right one here. So I think it's going to be that one. So has that come up with a...
Yes, it's looking good.
That's looking good. Well, that's encouraging, isn't it?
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk about this. I'm aware that a few parish councils are thinking of adding a few community EV chargers in their parish, and I've been contacted by a few, and we've had a chat about it, which is good. But always useful to do a sort of presentation on it to help if I can. But I'm aware that we actually started looking at this at 2022 and implemented it in 2023. It's a rapidly changing environment, so things may have changed a little. On the other hand, we can also have a little look at how things have gone and what we've learned from that. So there's pros and cons to coming at it after a couple of years. So with that, let's move on, if we can, to the first question that one sort of asks himself is why are we doing this? And when I'm talking here, I'm talking on behalf of the Steeple Marden Parish Council. We are tucked right at the bottom left of Cambridgeshire, right on the boundary with two other councils or counties, sorry. But our thought on EVs was that we were keen to promote the transition to cleaner transport. We thought that by doing something, we would show that support, be a visual reminder that EVs are coming. We were also aware that we do have homes in the village that don't have a driveway. So by having chargers in the village, that might help them. And we were quite clear from the outset that we didn't want to necessarily use this as a money-making activity, but equally we didn't want it to become a drain on our resources either. So that was sort of the background. We bound it around as one of the possible projects that the parish council could look at. And we said, yes, let's have a go. Let's see what we can find. That led us on to doing some usage modeling and building a sort of basic business case to say, well, are we likely to be able to do this at all and not have ongoing costs that ruin the parish council? And of course, this is a very difficult thing to do because you have to estimate how many cars might want to charge, how long they might want to charge for, all of those sorts of things. But we felt it was a useful exercise. It got us thinking about all of the different costs involved and how they fitted together. And interestingly, we guessed that it would start quite slowly and gradually build. And so we had a time in 2023 and then another look in 2030, I think we were looking at, to see how it might grow. And we were also at this stage looking at what sort of price we might be charging for the electricity and how much we might be paying for it. But that indicated to us that being fairly cautious, we could see that we could make the books balance, although clearly there are some risks associated with that. But at the end of the day, those risks you could see weren't actually too big. So that gave us some confidence to move on. It's worth saying that we felt that we were going to be putting these in at the recreation ground. There was a fairly large car park there. It's within a 5-minute walk of quite a large number of the houses in the village, but it could be used therefore the charges could be used by people who were visiting the recreation ground, the village hall, or on the sports facilities. And they could also, somebody could leave a car there for longer times if necessary. So we then thought, well, we are bound to be asked by any grant funders that we ask, have we actually determined that there is a need for this? So we did a survey, and we think we got to all 450 households, because we actually, in the end, I think, posted a little notice through everybody's door asking people to do the survey either by paper and returning it through the post office, or by doing it online. We actually got a 23% response rate, and 81% of those were positive. They thought, nope, that would be a good idea. And interestingly, over 50% of the respondents were saying that they were considering buying a battery electric vehicle in the next few years. So this was back in 2022. So that was quite positive. And a lot of people also recognized they did have visitors, and their visitors were beginning to ask them, was there somewhere local that they could charge their car? So that also looked like a quite a good use case as well. We also determined by various means, primarily wandering around and counting, that there were 63 premises within a 5-minute walking distance of the recreation ground that did not have off-street parking. So they only had on-street parking. So that made them good candidates as well for potentially using this facility. So we felt that was all pretty positive. The question then was, well, what shall we install? And this is where it starts getting very complicated, because there are literally hundreds of chargers available on the market, all sorts of shapes and sizes and speeds and so on. The crucial step is that there are AC chargers and DC chargers. The AC chargers are much cheaper, much simpler. They tend to be the slower ones, and the DC chargers are the big, powerful, expensive ones. And those DC chargers tend to be used for en route charging. So they're at the motorway service stations and other big hubs where there are lots and lots of chargers for people moving on through the day, who therefore need to arrive, charge for half an hour or so, and then be off on their way again. We didn't feel that rapid charging rate was the usage model that we were looking for, and therefore an AC charger was going to be suitable for us. If that's the case, the next step is, well, do you have a single phase power supply or a 3-phase power supply available? If you have 3-phase, then you can have a 22 kilowatt AC charger, although most cars can only accept 11 kilowatts of AC. So maybe a 22 kilowatt charger is a little bit over the top. But a single phase will allow a 7 kilowatt charger. Those are the common ones. And another aspect of this is that if it's less than 8 kilowatt charger, then you don't have to have a card reader, a credit card or a debit card reader, as a payment method. And those readers are quite expensive, both to install and to operate. So going for a 7 kilowatt charger is quite sensible. If people have got a bit of time, so they're going to be on site for a few hours, then a 7 kilowatt charger is well suited to them. But we did want a commercial grade. charger, one that was going to take a bit of knocking about and standing out in the rain and so on. We wanted more than one outlet, so we were looking for a dual outlet charger, and we wanted it to be easy to use. I've mentioned at this point the charging method, and if any of you have a battery electric vehicle, you'll know how annoying it is that you can't just rock up to a charger and always use a credit card or an app or anything else. It tends to be a complete variety of methods. Now, there is a standard coming along that is going to sort this out. It's part of ISO 15118, and it's called Plug and Charge. And what it will mean is that a person in a car will register the car to a card. And so when that car comes to a charger and they plug it in, the car and the charger know where the money's going to come from, so nothing else needs to happen. Now, if anybody has a Tesla, they will know that that is how that works, and it's a very, very simple experience. Other cars at the moment don't typically have that, and the chargers can't yet support it. So it is a future, although it is beginning to happen. There are something like 20 manufacturers now building their BEVs with the right software installed. And when you are buying a charger, it's worth asking whether it is going to be capable of running plug and charge in the future, because surely that must be the way of going. Literally turn up, plug in, nothing to do, no cards to tap, no apps to use, nothing else. So it looks like a very good future, but we're not quite there yet. Be ready for it, but in the meantime, you'll have to do something else. And we didn't want to go with installing a card reader. So we have had to accept that users have to have a particular app on their phone. And from that app, they can start a session and finish a session and so on. So that's worthy of thought and maybe worth a discussion a little later on. The next question was, well, where to locate it? And I said we were going to put this up at our recreation ground. We have quite a large car park there already, but we know that at times it becomes very full, especially when there are football matches and tennis matches and things on. So we didn't want to go and use some of that space and have people complaining at us that we had made the car park smaller. So we opened up 2 new parking spaces and labeled those as, please leave these for EV charging. And I think that was pretty well received and has been reasonably well adhered to. We haven't had too many people going and parking in these slots when they really shouldn't. But of course, these locations need to be near enough to a power supply. You do need to have mobile coverage or Wi-Fi coverage, and you need to be able to get internet to them because the chargers will need to be online. Some of them can operate through a mobile SIM card that you can pop in there, but that's never particularly reliable. So my recommendation would always be to run a data cable from a source of the internet. And the other consideration would be, have you got CCTV where you're going to do this? If so, it's useful to make sure there is a camera pointed in the right direction, just in case something should ever happen. So that dealt with our, where to locate. Then it came down to, well, how do you get around doing this? And the major question is, well, do you just get or organize with a company to do it all, or do you try and run the process yourself and get contractors in? There are organizations that will just come out, have a look at your environment, make a guess themselves at a business case, and take the whole thing on They will run it all and so on. They sometimes need some payment or some guarantee of payment. But sometimes if they think there really is a very good opportunity there, then they might be prepared to do it without charge to the parish council. So it's worth considering that. But our view was that after talking to a few of them, it was quite clear that we were going to totally lose any control of it. They were just going to do what they were going to do. And that might suit some. We decided we wanted a little bit more hands-on than that. So we decided that we would engage with contractors and we would manage the process ourselves. Luckily, local contractors we found were very helpful, very keen to do it, very keen to help. The parish council at this stage said, okay, we've done enough research, we know what we want to do, we know how we want to do it. We can contribute up to £4,000, but it's going to cost more than that. So we knew that grant funding was going to be a requirement, and that was one of the next steps to work out exactly what was around at the time. It became clear, by the way, that we'll come on to grants a little bit more in a moment, that grants are around, but they're changing. So you have to make sure that you understand what's available at any one time. So we then get on to the sort of project planning and so on. We knew that we needed to contact the local DNO to make sure that the supply that was in fact coming to really the village hall was capable of supplying us. And therefore you need to make sure that it's a 100 amp supply coming in. That reminds me of something on choosing a charger. You will find that some chargers are able to monitor that total power being drawn from the grid. And if other users of that power supply are drawing quite a lot, perhaps they've got ovens on doing other things, then the EV charger can cut itself back in what it provides to a car so that you never exceed a particular limit you can set. And so we made sure that we had a charger that could do that. We have never seen it had to actually cut back and not deliver its full amperage, but it has that capability should anybody start being or taking quite a load on the system. Earthing comes into it as well. If you don't find a charger that has pen fault protection built in, then you can end up spending quite a lot of money on putting extra earthing protection into the system, whereas these pen fault protected chargers just deal with all of that. Again, having an electrical contractor who knows what they're talking about and knows they can have that discussion with the charger providers is useful. We did give written design briefs to each of the contractors to make sure they knew what we were wanting them to do and making sure things weren't falling down cracks. You also have to find what is called a back-end processing organization. So this is somebody that will basically be monitoring the charger all the time. And when somebody comes up to it and says, right, I want to charge, they are the people that make sure that there is money to be had. They take that money, they watch how much power has been taken and so on. And so the charger should work with what's called OCPP, and as long as it does, then there are quite a few back-end processors that you can choose from to actually do all of the billing and management for you. They do take a small percentage of the amount of power money that's collected for the power, but we felt that it was a necessary part of the process, and I must say that has gone very smoothly. Another thing that we didn't sort of think about until quite late was just how useful it is to have clear signage and usage instructions around. So because we are on the recreation ground, We have now put a sign up on near the road saying there are chargers available up here, and then actually at the site itself, a set of instructions so that people know which app they have to have, and then once they've got it, how to use that app. The other aspect is that it's worth promoting, and you can promote it locally in newsletters and social medias and so on, but also you submit details of your charger once it's operational to various organizations. Now, there used to be a national charge point registry, and it was usually a requirement of any grant funding that you made your charger available on the national charge point registry. I believe that has now closed. Not quite sure why that is, but there are other organizations like Electroverse and ZapMap who have basically taken on that function. You notify them that you've got a charger available for the public and consumer use, and they will put it onto their system. And people that own battery electric vehicles typically have ZapMap with them, and so they can always find out where chargers are. So other than that, the project did run reasonably to plan. The black line in the middle of that Gantt chart was an interesting delay, and that was basically a delay of a few months whilst the grant funders sorted out their funding mechanisms and so on. I think that was because we were quite early with a couple of the grants that we were using, and they hadn't quite worked out how they were going to process it all. But eventually we got there and were able to pick up and complete the project, and it actually went live, I think, in March 23. Just to talk a little bit about the grant support, at the time there was an on-street residential charge point scheme being run by the DFT, actually administered by the Energy Savings Trust, and that was very useful to us. There are, as I understand it, other replacements for that now, so it's definitely worth looking to see. We also have support from South Cambs District Council, and I know that scheme is still running, so that's well worthwhile. Interestingly, the ORCS grant would not pay for the provision of the parking spaces themselves, whereas South Cambs District Council didn't really mind where their grant was used in the provision of the electric vehicle charger. So having that combination of grants did mean that we could cover our costs well. They did typically want to be recognized, and so we had to make sure that all of our signage had the correct logos and so on them. And basically, we were quite happy to support the supporters of us. In total, the project did come out to 13.5K. We were awarded 10K in grants, so that was then within the top up that the parish council had approved. So we got across the line, and it, as I say, went live in March 23. So how have things gone? Now, this is an analysis up until May 25. The purple line is looking at the total number of kilowatt hours that are being sold every month. And we've also got there the number of sessions there are in each month and the average number of kilowatt hours per session. Now, can you actually make much sense of it all? It's difficult. The usage levels are not that high. We get 10 to 20 uses a month of it. It is gradually going up. But what was noticeable, certainly over the opening months, was that it went from people just experimenting and connecting to see whether they could and just taking a kilowatt hour or two, to sessions that were much longer, with people drawing 50 or 60 kilowatt hours at one go. And another thing we have noticed is that some users come quite regularly and then just stop. And our reasoning of that, we think, is that there are some locals who are buying a battery electric vehicle. They're using the community chargers for a while, but after a few months, they've managed to organize themselves. They've got their own charger installed at home, so they don't need to use the community chargers anymore. If that is correct, and we know from one or two occasions that is correct, then that's excellent. We have managed to achieve one of our goals. We are helping people in that transition across to a battery electric vehicle. Back in August 23, you'll say that I've marked there a fault occurred, and interestingly, despite it all set up so that we are supposed to be alerted if there is a fault, it suddenly became apparent that the chargers weren't operational, although the systems were saying they were. We got it as soon as that was realized. It was fixed very quickly by the manufacturers of the charger itself. And since then, it has actually worked without a problem. But it's interesting that it took quite a while after that fault was repaired for usage to sort of pick up. And it's amazing, isn't it, that you only want one bit of trouble and you need probably 10 bits of good news to overcome the one bit of trouble. So well worthwhile trying to really manage and watch and make sure that they are maintained well. So I think that's most of the things there. I would say that it's not a profitable exercise. We found over the time that basically the amount of money we have acquired from the users of the system have just about balanced the costs. And it's noticeable that there are running costs in that the charger does sip a little bit of electricity all the time, whether it's being used or not. That's keeping its screen alive and running a few other things. But that background usage, how much power that it draws when it's not being used, is probably another thing to put on the list of things to check when you buy a charger unit. A few things that tripped us up on the way, or things that we had to recognize, was that if you as a parish council are going to start charging people for electricity, then the clerk has to have the general power of competence in their accreditation. And our clerk was sort of 90% of the way through their accreditation, and we had to just nudge them across the line to make sure that we could actually do that or start charging for electricity. So that's one thing to look at. And of course, you can, as a parish council, lose that if you ever change your clerk and the next one you get in isn't accredited. So something to be aware of. Signage, I've also already mentioned. We felt it necessary and useful to put a sign up on the road saying charges this way. But of course, it's never simple to put a sign up on a lamppost or something that's owned by somebody else. And so we did have to go through various approval processes, which went through the normal fun and games of, oh, we didn't even know we had a lamppost there, and all these sorts of things. And oh, well, if we don't know what type of lamppost it is, so we don't know whether it will support a sign. But luckily, South Cambs District Council finally saw sense and allowed us to put a relatively small sign up. Obviously, energy pricing is going up and down, so that can be a bit of a hazard. But by locking in for reasonable length contracts, that's been managed okay. Security, CCTV coverage and stuff, it has proven useful. Luckily, we haven't had any problems of vandalism or anything with the chargers. But other things that are going on the recreation ground, the fact that we've got CCT coverage does definitely find its uses. I've mentioned data coverage in the back, but the equipment does need to be connected. And not only that, it's obviously very useful for the mobile users. The people that are coming to charge, they're going to use an app, so they need to have coverage. We do luckily have free Wi-Fi available in the area, and that is rather necessary because the mobile data coverage is very, very poor in our recreation ground. I've mentioned maintenance of the unit itself, but we did put the charger right up against a hedge, and it soon became apparent that that was something that we needed to put onto the maintenance list as well, making sure you cut the hedge back so it actually remains visible. So I think that's the most of the information there. Very happy to take questions, and we have got a little handout where we go through a lot of those sorts of considerations, things that we thought about. And if anybody's interested in the project briefing we gave to the contractors, the survey that we did and what the analysis of that was, the modeling that we did, all of those sorts of things. Any of that is use to people, then just do email me on evcharges@steeplemardenpcgov.uk, and I'll pop something through to you. But other than that, yes, the chargers are up and running and are being used. So many thanks, and very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. That was fascinating. I got a whole bunch of questions for you, but I'll give priority to those people who have raised their hands and would like to talk about it. So let's go with Peter first of all, please. You're on mute, Peter.
Thank you, Malcolm. That was very interesting. And yeah, I will ask if I for all those details which you have, because it's great to have a template to be able to show to other kind of parishes in that respect. A few questions. What do you charge, and how much does it cost you? In other words, what are you paying for in terms of kilowatt hours? That's the first couple of questions.
Okay, well, it's very simple. We set it in the early days at 49 pence per kilowatt hour, and we looked around at what others locally were doing and so on. That seemed to map in reasonably well. At the time, we were being charged 29 pence per kilowatt hour by our electricity provider. That has since we managed to negotiate it down, but we have held 49 pence per kilowatt hour, so it's remained constant. There is an interesting little extra on that, and that is that our back-end provider did a deal with Electroverse, which is part of Octopus, and Electroverse have done deals with many charging companies, so that you can use their app to start and stop the charger. And if you do that, then somehow or other, Electroverse customers only pay 39 pence a unit, but we still get 49 pence. So quite how that works, I'm not too sure, but we don't ask too many questions. Those people with Electroverse cards, fine. So it's a bit strange, but hopefully that answers your question. So we're I think around 22-25 pence a unit at the moment that we're being charged by our electricity provider. It varies night and day. And so if people are charging up overnight, we make a little bit more than we do if they charge during the day. We don't try, we could, but we don't put differential pricing on at all. And it is quite common that people who are running it for several hours do come up quite late at night, plug in, and then pick it up first thing in the morning, which is fine.
Yeah, and then leading on to that is how the users, how do they actually use it, in terms of, I don't know, plugging it in. I mean, more than that, what's the pattern of usage in terms of, are they actually local people? Are there visitors that come along? What time, day and whatever. I mean, sorry.
It's total, as far as we can see, it's a total mix. I mean, it's difficult to know. What we do get is we know the last 4 digits of the card that somebody has used to charge with. So using that, we know how frequently people come. And what we find is that there are perhaps 4 or 5 cards being used quite frequently, and some of them then become really quite heavy. So they're perhaps twice a week there, the same one, putting in 20, 30 kilowatt hours each time. And then, as I say, they'll suddenly disappear. They'll go. And so the fact that they've been there for several months doing that and then suddenly disappear suggests to us they probably are local, and suggests to us that they've probably now found another source, probably at their house, to do it, or maybe their work has put in a charger or something. Others are just cards that we see once and never see again, and well, those, I guess, are visitors to the area.
And any idea what percentage of those, who you suspect are local compared to the one-off ones?
I would say it's 80% local people and perhaps 20% one-offs.
Yeah,
something like that.
And of course, it would be logical if you're charging 49 pence, and if they have got a charger in their own home, they could get it for 7 pence.
Yes, far cheaper. On the other hand, whilst we have kept at 49 pence, I think the national average for a 7 kilowatt charger is now something like 56 or something. So we are lower than
yeah, although it does seem to be going down, because I know,
well, that's really why we haven't changed it, as it does drift up and drift down. So
and in terms of over the period of 24 hours, is there a lot more usage at night, or is there more usage when there's likely to be some activities going on at the recreation field?
yes,
Was it any time of the day?
it is a mix. The long sessions do tend to be late evening and overnight, but not always. And then the shorter sessions tend to be just during the day, but some of those are first thing in the morning, some are middle of the day, and some of them are later. I mean, it is very variable.
There's one last follow-up question to that, is in terms of, are you not able to get that data from whoever manages the system, or you're the company that manages it? Is that difficult to get hold of?
Who a user actually is,
Yes.
where they live and so on. No, I don't think so. I think we're all data protected on all of this. I mean, we've got CCTV. We can see what registration numbers there are. You could do all sorts of things if you wanted to, but we don't do that. We do analyze a little bit these last 4 digits of the card number, just because that identifies a particular user. But I mean, they could be bringing up two vehicles. We don't know. Haven't looked at that. So we haven't really analysed it more than that.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Malcolm. Can we go on to David, please?
Yes. The obvious way to find out about it is to ride to Steeple Marden and plug in my electric motorbike. In the meantime, I noticed that that picture you showed us is on PlugShare, but there don't seem to be anyone bothering to record on PlugShare or ZapMap. They've used it. I was wondering if you'd done a follow-up of your survey at all in terms of acceptance, and are there people using it, and this question about whether they've gone and got their own charger now they've got a car and so on, which might be easiest just asking people.
We haven't. We are sort of the view that it is being used. We know it's caused discussion. There are people that wander past and wander up to it to have a look at what it is, and clearly cause discussions. And really, that was what we were wanting to do. We were wanting to just raise the whole issue and get people realizing that, yeah, there are charges around. It's not magic. It's not a mystery. And that seems to be working. So at the moment, there hasn't been a real call on further analysis.
Okay. And do you ever get more than 2 cars there and someone queuing up?
Yeah, this is one thing that's worth mentioning, because I talked a little bit about icing, where an internal combustion car goes and parks in these spaces. It's not only internal combustion cars that go here. We have found occasions when the car park is very busy, there's a lot going on at the recreation ground, that both of these chargers are occupied, spaces are occupied, and I've enthusiastically gone up and to find out who the owners are and have a chat with them and find out, only to find that neither of them are charging. So they are electric vehicles, they're parked there. Sometimes they have the cables connected, sometimes they don't, but they're not charging. And it appears that what's happening is that people are saying, well, I've got an electric car, I'll make it look as if I'm charging. And, I've now got an extra parking space that other people don't have, which I find quite appalling. We've done a bit of research to try and find out who these people are. We sometimes have put little bits of paper under their windscreen wiper to say that these are for electric vehicles that need charging. Please don't use these for any other purpose. And it could be that under those circumstances there have been cars that have come to charge and found the charger not available, which would be very, very disappointing. But I have to say that this is very, very rare. I would say 99.9% of the time, if not 99.999% of the time, there's at least one space where we have seen on occasion both chargers being used at the same time, but again, very small amounts of overlap. So it indicates to us that actually at the moment, just 2 chargers here, the 2 charge ports is sufficient.
Okay, and yeah, I was going to say final question. Actually, it's a couple related together. This back-end processing organization isn't a charge point operator, is it?
Well, it's a bit difficult because they've changed their name somewhat, and I'm never too sure where it is. We use a company called Curve 360, who were part of Project EV. Project EV are the people that make the charge point that we purchased. And because there was a link there, we thought, well, it was worth starting with them, because if there were any problems, it was the one company dealing with the back end and the charger, so they could sort it out. And indeed, they did when there was a problem. but we could go elsewhere if we wanted to now, and we possibly could because we have more confidence. But on the other hand, it has worked. It's worked pretty seamlessly, and they are there at 24 hours a day now. If anybody has a problem, it's them they phone up. So it seems to work.
And the related bit to that is, to sell electricity, you need a general power of competence. But if you'd gone the route of having a CPO doing everything, I guess they would be selling and you wouldn't need that.
Yes, I think that's correct. And typically they would then, there are different mechanisms. There are some that will speculatively invest themselves and install something, and then they will take any profit and all profits out of it. But they'll obviously need to be pretty sure that they can actually make a profit out of it. There are others that will say, okay, if you want this done, we'll organize it all, but you need to pay us to do it. And there's everything in between, really. If you, as far as I can see, if you look and talk around, and so we've just gone for one end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Malcolm. Helen, your turn, please.
Malcolm, that was extremely interesting, and as for me personally, has come along at just the right time. I'm a town councillor in Weymouth, and I'm chair of the CEE working group. And one of the things we've been looking at is the coverage of charging points in Weymouth. And though Dorset Council has kindly put lots in the public car parks, there are still great areas that have nothing at all, and streets of terraced houses where, you know, it's impossible to find a parking space, let alone one outside your own house. And I'm extremely interested in this. I have a few questions. Did you, as a parish council, have to use a tender process to select the company you went with? Or is that...
well, because we were just going down to contractor level, each actual arrangement with each contractor was relatively small.
Right.
We did go out to tender on several aspects of it. So I mean, certainly we searched around for various charges and looked at various pricing and selected the one we wanted, and then we got various quotes for that and went with the best one for that. Various organizations for actually doing the install, various contractors for doing the electrical install, the groundworks, they were all separate. And each of them, at each time we did write a request for quotation, we sent it out, and we, as I say, gave them a very detailed purchase order at the end of it that specified very clearly what we were expecting of them. And that always did work very, very smoothly.
Okay, thank you. I would be interested in any information you can pass over and share, because it's you know, I've got to engage the rest of the council with my enthusiasm. So
Okay.
you know, if we can make it look as, oh look, somebody's done it, isn't it easy? That would be great. CCTV, I presume, because my first question I put down was vandalism, and then you did mention CCTV, so I presume you've not had anybody tamper with it or just chuck paint over it for the thrill of it, or you don't live in that type of an area where you get that type of...
Well, yeah, luckily we don't seem to be. We seem to be in a fairly good area.
Right.
So no, we haven't had any problems at all. We have had the odd issue on the recreation ground, so it's not totally without.
Right.
But it is quite clear that there is CCTV around. The signs are up and so on, and there is a CCTV camera pointing right at this installation. But luckily, we've never had to use it for.
Okay, so do you have any idea who would be liable for repairs if somebody was to decide to mess with it and damage it? Would it become down to you, or would the you know, is your insurance, are you covered by your insurance to do that, or the people who've installed it, they sort of build it into the cost that...
Oh, it's certainly no. The contractors we used were literally installers.
Right.
So the liability does rest with us. We do have it on our insurance.
Right.
Quite what that means when if it ever came to it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see that there is a bar up to make sure that people don't reverse straight into the unit, which is apparently the most common problem.
Right.
And luckily our bar is still upright, which is apparently quite surprising. Most bars that you see have already been knocked a few times. So far we haven't had to test it at all. Luckily, the cost of the equipment, I mean, the actual charging unit itself was under £2,000.
Right.
You know, most of the cost is in preparing everything for it, and so really, sort of the worst that could happen is somebody really smashes up the charge unit itself. Well, you can unbolt it, bolt a new one on, and you're off
Right.
again, and
Okay.
it's not cost
Okay.
a huge
All
amount
right.
of money.
Well, as a town council, we have, you know, high deprivation areas, and sometimes, you know, things that we have to pay
Yeah.
out for. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, it's worth saying that there are some chargers very specifically targeted at more difficult areas,
right.
and they're even more robust and have other mechanisms so that they're easy to deal with. So that's a thought. Some of them disappear completely into the ground when they're not being used. You have to have the app, and you have to
Rise
request
up.
the app, and then they appear out of the ground, all sorts of things. So
Oh, wow.
you know, you can
Right.
really go to town if you want to.
Okay. Just one last question. I noticed on your graph, the spikes. What could you account for that? Why there was that huge spike 2 years?
Well, well, the spike in electricity use is because I think there were, but this is a guess, I have to say.
Right.
I think there were 2 or 3 people that bought battery electric vehicles in the village. They didn't at that time have their own charger, and so they all started coming and using this overnight and so on.
Right.
Typically, they never clashed overnight. But there would be one night, one another night, and so on. And by the time you take sort of 30 or 40 kilowatt hours several times in a week, well, yeah, it adds up to your 200 and
Yeah.
something or 300 kilowatt hours over the month that we
Right.
saw on those times. Those people have since disappeared.
Yes,
Now,
but
have they moved or whatever? I
yes.
don't know. But
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Thank you very much. It's all been very interesting. Thank you.
Well, Malcolm, just before I throw in my questions, just like to point out there are a couple of questions in the chat where people are looking for your email information and a couple of other things. Could you have a link to Curve 360? I think quite interesting is the question of, do you have a system for people to book a space? I would guess the answer is no, because I'm not quite sure how you say it's reserved.
no, there's all sorts of issues with that, and we really haven't seen the need. It's just the availability has been very good. I suppose the usage hasn't been as high as it might, and if we got to that problem, it would be nice to have. We'd be looking at increasing the number of chargers we've got, I suppose, but we just haven't got there at this time. The 2 ports seems to be sufficient. As far as the email address goes, I did say EV chargers at Steeple Marden PC, but I can come back to you with these bits of information.
Thank you. And a couple of questions that I thought of. If someone has gone off and left their cable at home, is there any provision of cables from your end, or do you depend on everyone bringing their own?
Yeah, or each battery electric vehicle owner soon gets to realise that they need to carry a cable around.
Yeah, I know. But
AC chargers typically do not have attached cables. DC chargers do. So if you're on one of the slower chargers, you will need a cable, and people do. Interestingly, we did have one customer who got in touch with us because they had tried using our chargers several times, and we could see it coming up on the logs as attempt failed, going, oh, what's going on? And we managed to find them, speak to them, and they said, well, we keep plugging this in and it just doesn't work. And I tried my cable with their car, worked perfectly.
Right.
And it transpired this was a brand new cable that had come with a brand new car, and it just didn't work. They went back to their garage, complained. They instantly gave them a new cable, almost to the point of knowing there had been a problem with some of the cables they'd handed out. And sure enough, very happy bunny. After that, it all worked fine.
Right.
But yeah, so you get to know whether your cable works or not, I guess.
Okay, another quick question. Do you happen to know whether ZapMap and the other mapping organizations are able to record if your system is available or not?
Most of them do, and so our back-end provider, and it's another reason why you might choose one rather than another, does provide that information to companies like ZapMap.
Brilliant. Good.
So yes, you do know whether they're in use and whether they are available and operational.
And last question is, I don't know if you're on your planning committee or planning application committee, but I always wonder whether there are all sorts of planning applications in for putting in the cross pavement charging systems that people who are in terrace houses without driveways can at least put in a charger across the pavement without endangering all the pedestrians. But do you see any of those, or has there been an increase in that?
No, we haven't seen any of those. Clearly, you know, the quick approval for those has only recently come through, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But we've not seen that happen. We have seen one or two houses that we considered to not have off-road parking create off-road parking by turning their garden, knocking down
Yeah.
their garden wall and turning their garden
Yeah, no, I can see
into a
that. I can see
parking
that.
space.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Which seems a bit dramatic, but there we go.
And thank you very much. Let me pass you on to Stuart, please.
Hi, thank you. That was a very interesting presentation. You come across lots of problems or things to overcome that I would never have thought of. And you've completely put me off trying to do it for my own council. I think I would leave it to the experts. One thing I would sort of just take you to task a little bit is early on in your presentation, you seem to be saying that 22 kilowatt charging was a bit overkill. But the whole direction for EVs seems to be faster and faster charging. I'm a recent convert to an EV, and I think mine will accept to about 150 kilowatts.
Not AC. Not
and
AC.
a lot of sort of newer cars are going for 350. I think that there's some Hyundai which will do 700, and they're even talking about 1,000 kilowatt charging.
Yes, this has that. Those are DC charging rates, and so what I was talking about is if you make the choice to go to AC, and I would expect most parish councils probably will go with AC because the charges are much cheaper. That's so basically the car itself then has to convert AC into DC to charge the battery. So basically cars, the battery electric vehicle has an inverter in it to do that. And most cars are limited to 11 kilowatts or less. And that's the limit. So you can plug into a fast charger that's capable of 22 kilowatts AC, but your car will only charge at 11 kilowatts because it's the limit is the inverter in the car. So that's why I was mentioning it. There are cars out there that have more. Renault typically do because in France they use AC chargers up to I think it's 43 kilowatts. And so Renault do fit larger ones. So if they come across a 3-phase charger in the UK, they will be able to get the full 22 kilowatts. And you know that makes a difference. It's 3 times faster than a 7 kilowatt charger. That's useful. But as soon as you've gone over 8 kilowatts capability, you do have to have a card reader. which, as I said, I think is the wrong thing. I would much prefer to see the government pushing for ISO 15118 to be implemented than pushing everybody towards card readers. But there we go.
Yeah, I do think one of the drawbacks to getting an EV is the prolonged charging time. So certainly if you're doing sort of long journeys, this, that, and the other. And I think one thing that will encourage people if there were more of the higher speed chargers available.
Yes, and of course that's in a way a very important but a different business opportunity. And luckily there are a lot of companies out there, Ionity, Nedfast, Instavolt, Pulse BP, all sorts of people who are into that. GridServe, they're out there building large sets of infrastructure with 20, 30, 50 chargers available on site, dining facilities, coffee facilities, meeting rooms, all sorts of things. And they're definitely 300, 400 kilowatt chargers. And as you say, cars are beginning to be able to take that. Having now had electric cars for 5, 6 years myself, I find it often gets to the point now where the car charges so quickly you can't finish a cup of coffee. In fact, it's embarrassing because you go in, you order your coffee, you've just been given it, and the car bleeps and says, right, your car's finished. Please take your car off the charger, otherwise you'll have penalty charges apply. So you have to either drink the coffee rapidly or rush through the service station with your coffee or leave it and go. And you actually would have preferred it to be a little bit slower.
Yeah. Well, I must say,
I've managed yourself in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I'm still yet to use a public charging point. I found the home charging to be quite adequate. Well, anyway, thanks for a very interesting talk.
Good. Okay.
And back to you, David.
Yes, that it depends on whether you have a cafe or not, whether you need fast charging. In fact, with cafes, you want slower charging. I guess you've got a cafe at your recreation ground. And the question I was going to ask, something just occurred to me. There are some places that do entirely off-grid charging. They have a windmill or a solar farm. They don't go through the grid, so they can charge whatever they like. I don't know if there are spaces that you could use to do any of that, or if there isn't any space.
You certainly could. I mean, typically these systems have large arrays of solar panels or a wind turbine or hydro. They have a method of generating electricity, typically at a relatively low rate. They then have a battery on site that they're constantly charging that battery. And then when a battery electric vehicle comes along, that battery dumps from itself into the car, and that cycle goes round again. And yeah, that's absolutely great, but boy, it's quite expensive. So yeah, in those areas where the national grid really can't provide a good power source, they can be extremely useful. But I would suggest that's for the big boys, not for the parish councils to really be in.
Well, any more questions from anybody else? Pete, Malcolm, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm, along with Helen, I'm going to be one of the people who goes to my parish council and says, come on, you've been bickering about this for so long. Here are people who've done it. It's possible. Get on with it. And we'll see where we go. But thank you so much for helping us out today. It was fascinating. And it was a great pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. And I hope it is useful. And yeah, by all means, drop me an email. I'll make sure you have the email, and we'll go from there. But well done. Good. Good luck.
Okay.
Thanks, Malcolm. We'll very much keep in touch and enjoy
Thank
your
you.
holidays.
Okay, yes, thanks very much.
And thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. I would cheerfully announce what the topic is going to be next week, but I haven't got the slightest idea yet. So we'll do that later. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.